There's something quietly painful about doing everything right and still feeling like nothing is shifting. You say the words, you visualize, you repeat the affirmations every morning like a sacred ritual. I am wealthy. I am abundant. I am free. But deep down, the air doesn't change, the account doesn't change, the life doesn't change. And so a silent question begins to echo. Why isn't this working for me? You're not alone in that question, and you're not wrong for asking it. There's no shame in the ache you feel when your inner work doesn't seem to reflect in the outer world. The truth is, you've been reaching with your words, but not yet embodying with your being. Not because you don't want to, but because no one told you what the I am really is. They gave you phrases, they gave you steps, but they didn't give you awareness. Neville Goddard never taught I am as a sentence to repeat. He revealed it as a state of being, a sacred position of the soul. He said, "To say I am rich when I am poor is to call something to witness that denies my claim." What he meant is this: your body, your breath, your heartbeat, they must align with the identity you declare. Because I am is not language, it is frequency. A silent command to the universe rooted not in sound but in assumption. And here is what most miss. Manifestation feels hard because most people are still affirming abundance from a consciousness of lack. They're still saying I am wealthy, while their nervous system whispers, but I don't feel safe. They're still envisioning success while their stomach tightens with fear of the bills. They've memorized the right words, but not yet lived the right self. That's where the shift begins. Not in what you say, but in what you believe while you say it. Bruce Lipton teaches that our biology is not just genetic, it's epigenetic. Our beliefs change the chemical reality of our cells. Your I am is literally encoded into your body. It's not just spiritual, it's physical. It's not just imagined, it's embodied. That's why no affirmation can override the state you're still unconsciously living in. And yet, this is not a message of frustration, it's a message of freedom. Because once you see the real I am, not as a phrase, but as the atmosphere you walk in, everything begins to respond differently. Money stops feeling like a battle. Opportunities stop hiding. Peace no longer feels like a reward you haven't earned. It feels like the baseline of your being. Today, you'll be shown what most people never notice. You'll understand why the real I am technique unlocks your ability to manifest wealth, not as something to chase, but as something to accept. You'll stop reaching and you'll start remembering, because the truth is, you never had to become wealthy. You only had to remember that you already were. Now, let's begin. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Just say I am wealthy. Repeat I am successful. Speak it into existence. And so you did, over and over, with hope, with effort, with discipline, but the shift never came. And you may have wondered in silence, am I doing something wrong? Not realizing that it's not your words that lack power, it's the missing connection between those words and the identity you're still carrying underneath. Neville Goddard spoke with clarity that pierces illusions. To say I am rich when I am poor is to call something to witness that denies my claim. He wasn't shaming the poor. He was revealing the vibrational contradiction that collapses manifestation before it begins. When you say I am rich, but your nervous system flinches in disbelief, the message received by the universe is not your voice. It is your state, your being, your emotional posture. Because the I am is not what your lips say. It's what your presence declares without sound. You can speak of wealth and still feel like an outsider to it. You can affirm abundance while your body walks in quiet defense, bracing for another no, another closed door, another month of lack. And so the I am doesn't land. Not because it isn't real, but because it hasn't yet become natural to you. That is the hidden reason why so many affirmations dissolve into disappointment. Not because the words are wrong, but because the identity behind the words is still rooted in fear, in separation, in survival. And so the I am gets tangled in contradiction. It becomes noise rather than vibration, thought rather than embodiment. But here's the gift. You don't have to force it to work. You don't have to convince the universe. You only have to feel your way back into a self where wealth doesn't feel like a fantasy, but like a quiet truth. The real I am isn't declared loudly. It is remembered silently, in the way you breathe, in the way you walk, in the way you no longer try to become, because you've already arrived. And in that arrival, reality bends. The subconscious reads identity, not language. If the subconscious were a person, it wouldn't care about grammar, pronunciation, or how perfectly you speak your affirmations. It wouldn't understand "I am wealthy" any more than it would understand "Je suis riche" or "Yo soy rico," because the subconscious does not respond to vocabulary. It responds to state. It listens not to your voice but to your vibration, not to your declarations but to your identity. This is why so many people speak their affirmations with intensity, repetition, and effort, yet their life still echoes the old version of them, because beneath the surface, they are still assuming the posture of scarcity, of doubt, of waiting. The subconscious reads that posture as truth. It registers the emotional code embedded in your energy, not the syllables rolling off your tongue. It's like trying to program a computer with poetry when what it understands is binary. The language is beautiful, but the code doesn't run. You can say, "I am abundant" for hours, but if the emotional code your body is transmitting is one of fear, anxiety, or expectation of disappointment, then that is what your subconscious records as the command. That is the reality it begins to construct. The shift then is subtle but powerful. Instead of focusing on the sentence, focus on the state. Instead of trying to say the right thing, start to feel the right reality. Assume the emotional atmosphere of wealth, not just the words. Let your nervous system breathe as someone who already has. Let your chest expand as someone who no longer waits. Let your inner world stop searching and start remembering what it feels like to be full. Because when the subconscious receives that signal, not as a performance but as an honest identity, it moves mountains. Not because you forced it, but because you finally spoke its only language, being. There is a subtle trap that many fall into without even noticing. You sit with your affirmations saying, "I am wealthy," while at the same time glancing at your bank account, calculating debts, or rehearsing the fear of not being able to cover tomorrow's needs. On the surface, it looks like faith. But underneath, it is still lack wearing a mask of abundance. This is why manifestation feels heavy and contradictory, because the words point in one direction, while the state quietly pulls in another. When Neville Goddard said that assumption is the invisible choice, he was pointing to this exact contradiction. You cannot assume abundance while your heart secretly trembles at the sight of emptiness. Because assumption isn't about denial, it's about embodiment. The subconscious does not respond to your cleverness in covering fear with affirmations. It responds to the vibration you dwell in. And if that vibration is scarcity, then scarcity continues to be the reality, no matter how many times you whisper, "I am rich." The real breakthrough comes when you stop affirming against the facts and instead begin affirming from the fulfilled fact. That means no longer declaring, "I am wealthy," while internally staring at the absence of money. Instead, you close the gap by moving into the feeling that wealth is already natural to you. You begin to walk, breathe, and even look at your account with a different presence, not one of fear, but one of quiet expectation, as though you are reading a chapter of a book you already know ends well. When that shift occurs, something remarkable happens. Affirmations stop feeling like a battle. They no longer serve as resistance against lack, but as confirmation of truth. Your words stop fighting against your state, and instead they echo it. You move from contradiction to coherence, from disguise to reality. And it is in that coherence that the I am begins to flow as it was always meant to, not as a chant to silence your fear, but as a living declaration that abundance is already the atmosphere you walk in. So many people approach money as if it were an equation. They believe if they just work harder, put in more hours, push with more intensity, then the results will finally multiply. But money is not a sum to calculate. It is an outflow of identity. It bends not to effort, but to state. And until this is understood, even the most disciplined work can leave someone exhausted, yet still entangled with scarcity. Neville revealed a reversal that feels almost shocking when you first hear it. It is not supply that creates the state of abundance. It is the state of abundance that creates supply. This means money does not arrive because you chase it, beg for it, or endlessly strategize for it. Money arrives because your consciousness has already become the kind of being for whom wealth is natural. Effort without embodiment only deepens the sense of striving. But assumption, silent, invisible, unshakable, calls forth what looks like opportunity, luck, and flow. Think of those moments when you've met someone who seems to walk in quiet confidence. They do not appear to be trying, yet doors open for them. People trust them. Investors lean toward them, jobs find them. It is not math that brought those outcomes. It is magnetism, born of state. It is identity radiating certainty. The world responds not to the words they speak, but to the atmosphere they carry. And this is why manifestation shifts the moment you release the belief that money is a product of effort alone. Wealth is not earned first in hours, but in being. The math comes after. The identity comes before. And when identity has settled, what seemed like struggle begins to look like grace. The flow of money stops being an equation to solve and becomes the echo of who you already are. The I am is not a phrase you recite. It is the climate you live inside. Neville described it as the feeling of permanent awareness, a state so natural that it colors every moment, whether you are speaking or silent. To truly embody I am wealthy is not to force yourself to say it each day, but to inhabit an atmosphere where wealth feels ordinary, expected, unquestioned. It is the invisible air in which your life unfolds. Imagine stepping into a room that has been cooled by air conditioning on a hot day. The change is immediate. You do not need to command the air to shift. It already surrounds you. It wraps itself around every object in the room, transforming the environment without effort. That is how the I am works when it is embodied. It becomes the atmosphere in which your thoughts, choices, and interactions naturally breathe. And just as a room takes on the temperature of its air, your life begins to take on the quality of your assumed state. This is why so many fail when they treat the I am as a statement instead of a setting. If you only declare I am abundant once in a while, but the atmosphere of your day is soaked in worry, the declaration cannot take root. Words alone cannot override the climate you are still dwelling in, but the moment the atmosphere itself changes, everything inside it changes with it. Your imagination, your decisions, your conversations, each begins to align with the new state without effort. Wealth, then, is not something you chase. It is a climate you cultivate. It is the invisible air that surrounds your being. And when that climate shifts, the external world bends to reflect it. Because the I am is not something you say, it is the atmosphere you carry. And once established, it transforms everything that breathes within it. Your body does not wait for outer proof to respond. It reacts instantly to the signals your inner world generates. When you step into the feeling of success, when you truly assume the state of wealth, your brain begins releasing dopamine and oxytocin, the very chemicals of satisfaction, trust, and expansion. The body cannot distinguish between what you imagine with intensity and what you live with your senses. To the subconscious, they are the same event. This is why Neville insisted on feeling the wish fulfilled, not merely declaring it. Because the moment you feel it, the body begins to align with it. Neuroscience now confirms what mystics always knew. The cells of your body bathe in the chemistry of your belief. Bruce Lipton has shown that genes do not dictate your reality. Your state of consciousness does. Beliefs send signals that literally alter gene expression, shaping the body into the image of the mind. And what you embody in consciousness becomes the living condition of your biology. Think of what happens when you worry. Your shoulders tighten, your breath shortens, your stomach contracts. The chemistry of fear floods your system, even when no threat is physically present. Now reverse it. Imagine what happens when you step fully into the I am of abundance. Your chest opens, your face softens, your heartbeat steadies. Your body receives the message of safety, of fullness, of plenty. And the cells align with that inner broadcast, as if it were already true in the external world. The miracle is that the body does not argue with imagination. It obeys it. It translates identity into chemistry, and chemistry into experience, which means every time you embody your chosen I am with sincerity, you are not only speaking to the universe, you are programming your very biology to walk as though the future were already here. And in that embodiment, the future cannot help but materialize. So many spend their days chasing money, believing that if they run fast enough, if they strategize hard enough, if they hustle without pause, the breakthrough will finally come. But chasing only deepens the sense of distance. Each effort, each attempt, quietly affirms, I don't yet have it. The energy of pursuit is the energy of lack, and so money seems to slip further away, like water trying to be caught in clenched fists. The moment of transformation comes when you stop seeing money as the target and begin seeing it as the side effect. Once the identity of prosperity has settled inside you, wealth no longer needs to be hunted. It begins to find you. You are no longer the one searching for opportunities. You are the one opportunities search for. You walk in rooms differently. You speak with a calm certainty that does not beg, and without effort, others begin to recognize stability and trust in you. Neville revealed that the outer world is simply a shadow of your inner assumption. When you assume yourself to be prosperous, not someday but now, the world bends to mirror that certainty. Investors, partners, clients, even unexpected gifts appear in alignment with the identity you embody. It is not the logic of strategy, it is the magnetism of state. Just as scarcity attracts more lack, prosperity naturally draws in its likeness. Think of those who radiate confidence without arrogance. They do not plead for success, yet success gravitates toward them. They do not constantly check if their seed has grown. They already live as if the harvest is guaranteed. That is the shift the I Am creates when it is embodied. Money becomes lighter, easier, no longer chained to pursuit. Because once you live as prosperous, money is not the prize. It is simply the echo of who you already are. There is a temptation many fall into, often without realizing it. When fear rises, when insecurity tightens its grip, they reach for affirmations like bandages. They repeat, "I am confident, I am safe, I am abundant," not from a place of knowing, but from panic. These words, instead of calming, often amplify the very fear they were meant to silence, because beneath the repetition, the subconscious still hears the truth. I do not feel safe. I do not feel abundant. I am trying to escape myself. Neville's teaching was never meant to be used as an escape. The I Am is not a disguise you put on to cover your wounds. It is not a mask to hide your trembling. When used this way, affirmations can actually deepen the wound because they remind the subconscious of the very gap you are trying to avoid. Fear grows stronger when you fight it with resistance. Insecurity grows heavier when you cover it with words that do not yet feel like yours. The true path is gentler, but more powerful. First, allow yourself to notice the insecurity without judgment. Do not resist it. Let it rise. Let it breathe. Then, instead of running from it, choose your I Am from a deeper place, one that is not trying to erase fear, but to stand beyond it. You do not say, "I am abundant," to convince yourself. You say it because it is the identity your soul remembers, even when your mind forgets. You step into it, not as a shield, but as truth. When affirmations are born from panic, they weaken you. When they are born from remembrance, they strengthen you. The difference is everything. Because the real I Am is not a tool for escape. It is a homecoming. It is not a reaction to insecurity. It is the atmosphere where insecurity dissolves on its own. And when you choose it this way, fear is no longer an enemy. It becomes a doorway to stand taller in the truth that was already waiting for you. There is a moment when knowledge must cross the threshold into embodiment. You can study the principles of Neville Goddard, listen to the science of Bruce Lipton, and understand intellectually that I Am is the key to manifestation. But until it becomes lived, until it becomes practice, it remains only words floating in the mind. The real I Am technique is not about layering affirmations over doubt. It is not about trying to trick the subconscious with endless repetition. It is about settling into the deepest truth of your being and allowing the universe to mirror it back without resistance. The practice begins with a sacred choice, one that happens in silence, long before any word is spoken. This choice is not about deciding what you want in the material sense, but deciding who you are in the eternal sense. Neville said, "Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness." In other words, everything begins not with circumstances, but with identity. So the first step is this: choose your I Am, but notice carefully. It is not "I will be." It is not "someday I will have." It is "I am." Now. Present tense. Immediate. You may choose "I am financially free." You may choose "I am secure." You may choose "I am prosperous." The words themselves are not the magic. They are the doorway. The true act is in deciding to wear that identity in consciousness before any outer evidence appears. The moment you claim it, you set the entire field of life into motion. Once the identity is chosen, The second step unfolds, entering the state. This is where imagination shifts from daydream to creation. Too often people visualize like outsiders peeking into a window, watching the life they desire from a distance. But Neville taught that true imagination means entering the scene from within it. You do not watch yourself living the life. You live it inwardly. You touch the doorknob of the home that is already yours. You feel the weight of the wallet that no longer scares you. You sense the calm rhythm of a heart no longer rushing with anxiety over bills. You enter, not as a visitor, but as a resident. This requires relaxation, because tension belongs to the old self. You cannot embody abundance while your body clenches in defense, so let the muscles release, let the breath deepen, let your chest open as if you are stepping into a new room filled with light. Then, from that state of ease, you allow the new identity to speak through you. The subconscious accepts the feeling as fact because it does not differentiate between what is outwardly real and what is inwardly assumed. Here is where neuroscience meets mysticism. Bruce Lipton explains that cells listen to your beliefs, responding chemically to your perceptions of reality. When you enter the state of "I am financially free," your biology shifts to match it. Dopamine and oxytocin rise, cortisol decreases, the nervous system calms. The body begins to live in a chemistry of abundance long before money arrives. This is not pretense, it is programming, and life reflects the body's vibration. The third step, perhaps the most misunderstood, is release. This is where so many sabotage the process. They plant the seed of identity, but then anxiously check the soil every day, looking for signs. Where is the money? Why hasn't it shown yet? Did I do it right? Each doubt is like digging up the seed before it has time to grow. The real I am technique requires faith in the invisible. Once you have entered the state, your role is no longer to manipulate the outer world, but to remain faithful to the inner identity. Neville called this living in the end. It is the art of persisting in the consciousness of fulfillment, without needing proof to sustain it. Imagine someone who has already become wealthy. They do not wake up each morning wondering if they are wealthy yet. They live naturally in that assumption. And so it must be with you. The task is not to constantly reassure yourself with words, but to normalize the state until it feels as ordinary as breathing. To deepen this practice, you may anchor it throughout your day. In the morning, as your eyes first open, dwell in the identity you have chosen. Let the first thought of the day be a silent "I am," not as a statement to force, but as an atmosphere to breathe. At midday, instead of worrying about outcomes, let an inner conversation unfold. Hear someone congratulating you, thanking you, admiring your stability. Enter into the dialogue as though it were real, because to the subconscious, it is. And at night, as you drift into sleep, close the day with the feeling that you already are what you have claimed. Sleep not as someone longing for change, but as someone resting in fulfillment. This rhythm does not require strain. It is not about endlessly chanting or straining for belief. It is about remembering that the I am is already the truth of your being, and that the world is only catching up to what you have allowed yourself to embody. Each time you return to this practice, you are strengthening the neural pathways of your chosen identity, making it the default vibration of your life. The real I am technique is therefore not a formula to force, but a rhythm to live. Choose the identity, enter the state, release the outcome. Again and again until it no longer feels like practice. It feels like you. And once it becomes you, reality has no choice but to mirror it. Because life is not answering your words. It is answering your being. This is why Neville declared, "Be still and know that you are God." The I am is the sacred declaration of that truth. And when practiced as identity, not performance, it becomes the doorway into everything you once thought was outside of you. The money, the freedom, the peace, they are not things to manifest. They are shadows cast by the light of who you have chosen to be. And once you walk as that being, the world rearranges itself without effort. The house, the opportunities, the abundance, they fall into place, not because you chased them, but because you remembered that they were always waiting inside the I am. The I am becomes powerful, not when it is declared with effort, but when it feels natural, when it dissolves into the rhythm of your everyday life. Neville insisted that assumption must become a habit of being, not a performance you return to only in moments of desperation. To achieve this, You weave the I am into simple daily rituals that gently shift your subconscious until the state of abundance feels as ordinary as breathing. The morning is your first doorway. Those few moments after waking carry a softness in which the mind is open and impressionable. Instead of letting the day begin with worry or old habits, breathe into your chosen identity. Let your first awareness be a quiet remembrance. I am abundant. Not as a wish, but as a fact you are already inhabiting. See yourself moving through the day with ease, feeling no tension in the body, no resistance in the mind. This gentle start sets the atmosphere before the world speaks its distractions. Midday carries its own challenge, because this is when stress and outside noise often pull you out of alignment. Rather than letting your mind spiral into doubt, return to the state through inner dialogue. Neville taught that the conversations you carry within are more powerful than the words you speak aloud. Hear someone affirming your success, congratulating you, recognizing your stability. Let the scene feel natural, as though it were already happening. These inner conversations saturate the subconscious with a reality that must eventually find reflection. Evening is perhaps the most sacred moment of all. Before you drift into sleep, release the concerns of the day and step into the feeling of fulfillment. Lie down as though you are already wealthy, already free, already secure. Neville called sleep the gateway to creation because what you assume in those final moments of awareness is impressed deeply upon the subconscious. When you fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you carry it into the very fabric of your being. Through these simple rituals, morning remembrance, midday dialogue, evening fulfillment, you begin to normalize abundance. The I am stops feeling like practice and becomes identity. And when wealth feels natural within, life begins to reflect it without. Because reality is not answering what you hope for, it is answering who you are. The only wealth you ever needed was I am. At the end of all seeking, there is always silence. A silence where the words dissolve and only the truth remains. That truth is the I am. Neville revealed it again and again. The I am is not a phrase to repeat, not a wish to chase, but the eternal center of your being, the very name of God expressing as you. Everything else, whether it is money, recognition, or opportunity, is only a reflection. They are shadows, images projected onto the canvas of life. But the light that casts those shadows is always the same. It is your state of consciousness. It is the identity you dare to claim. Think of the countless hours people spend chasing wealth, doubting themselves, exhausting their energy in strategies and comparisons. Yet, as Neville said, man's only obstacle is his failure to assume. The reason the pursuit feels endless is because it is directed outward, when the true cause has always been inward. Money does not create identity. Identity creates money. When you affirm wealth without embodying the state of being wealthy, you create more distance. But when you enter the atmosphere of abundance, quietly, consistently, naturally, the world cannot help but mirror it back to you. Science confirms this sacred pattern. Bruce Lipton shows us that belief does not stop at the level of thought. It reaches into the body, altering the chemistry of your cells, rewriting the programs of your biology. Your nervous system calms when you live in the state of security. Your heart rate steadies when you assume peace. Your very DNA listens to the atmosphere of your belief. This means your I am is not an abstract idea. It is embodied in the fibers of your being. It is spiritual truth written into physical form. And yet, the mistake many make is treating the I am as though it were a charm, a set of magic words that will bend the universe on command. They repeat without state, and the echo comes back hollow. The power is not in the sound of the words, but in the consciousness they carry. Spoken without embodiment, they are empty. Spoken as identity, they are creation itself. The I am was never meant to be recited like a spell. It was meant to be remembered as the doorway to your own divinity. So picture this clearly. You stand at the entrance of a mine, exhausted from digging outside yourself, searching for treasure in the dirt of the world, and suddenly you realize the gold was never buried out there. It has always been within. The I am is that mine. It is endless, inexhaustible, overflowing. When you stand in it, when you let it be the atmosphere of your life, you no longer chase, you no longer beg, you allow. And life brings its treasures naturally, not as miracles, but as reflections of who you already are. The only wealth you ever needed was I am, And when you finally claim it, not as words but as being, the world bends to show you the truth you have remembered.